which asked our residents about our partnerships within the region. Our governance review will primarily be an internal process. We have no method to work with other municipalities on a governance review. We cannot expect the other municipalities to simply comply to whatever Saanich comes up with as far as recommendations, how we would like to work better with them. We should participate in the study, because if we don't, I cannot foresee any other meaningful and unbiased towards Saanich's advantage method for us to engage in a study to help us evaluate our local relationships. That is a major reason why we must not disadvantage Saanich residents from having as much information as possible regarding the possibility of amalgamation, or even better coordination of services. I want to address some other concerns I've thought of or I've heard of since this motion was brought forward as a notice. The province on November 17th said it would pay for the study. It will not directly cost Saanich taxpayer dollars. It's in the Times columns. The motion I propose does not tie us to an outcome. It is a study. Will it cost us money in the form of staff time to participate? Undoubtedly. But so will our own governance review, and our residents deserve to not be shut out of this learning opportunity. I believe this needs to be done and can be done without a massive amount of work for Saanich staff. The government has said it will conduct the study. Does Colin Plant want amalgamation? Is this some Trojan horse for him to get amalgamation? No. I'm really not sure about amalgamation. How could anybody predict that the largest municipality in the region and the island needs to be joined with another? Maybe we would be best served standing alone. That's why I want to study. In my opinion, there are other municipalities that may be more suited to be joined in the region. However, this does not take away our need to know the results of the study. If we are concerned about the neutrality and professionalism of those conducting the study, i.e. the province, then we need to put these concerns in our letter. If the results that come back out of the study are seen as less than reliable, then we will show and tell our residents about these flaws. I purposefully included a meeting for residents to provide feedback as to what would be going into our letter, because amalgamation was not directly asked. The concerns of people pro and opposed to amalgamation need to be in that letter so that we can help shape the terms of reference. If we do not submit information to participate in the study, then another generation will likely pass before we are in this position again to have the province study amalgamation. And the great majority of the residents that I talk to will not feel that this council is reflecting what it wants. If we do not agree to participate in the study, then we are showing our collective closed-mindedness, if that's a word. We cannot solve our problems with the same level of thinking that created them. If that sounds familiar, it's because it was said by Albert Einstein. And while of course he was not referring to Saanich, the principle stands the same. When we asked Saanich voters to agree to a governance review, we didn't tell them what the terms of reference were or who would be conducting the study, except to say it would be community-based. This lack of advanced knowledge of how our review will be conducted doesn't seem to be a concern for this council. We trust our staff and our consultants who will help guide us with our governance review. Why is entering into another study with someone else doing the research potentially causing so much consternation? It's not as if we must act on the results. Sometimes being a good neighbor means joining in on something you're not thrilled to do, whether it's putting up a fence or a hedge. I think the least we can do is send a letter to agree we are interested in the study and to be a good neighbor. I ask you to please support this motion.
Thank you. Councillor German and then Haynes. I'm sorry, Councillor Haynes has had it first. I'll go with Councillor Haynes first. Councillor Haynes, I apologize.
Thank you. It's been very interesting listening to the comments from the audience this evening. And in fact, you're all correct in my way of thinking. I'll read the ballot question in case there's any memories that don't remember it. I had to look it up again myself today. Do you support Council initiating community-based review of the governance structure and policies within Saanich and our partnership within the region? This study will be ongoing through SANAGE. There's a request to staff to bring forward the report. I understand there's a consultant hired to help design this study, and it will be a fully engaged process for our residents. The motion on the floor today similarly asks our community to be involved in posing the structure or terms of reference of the letter to the province to, should council support, to SANAGE joining the provincial-led study that many of our neighbours have put forward. The Mayor of Langford has held back in a similar way to SANAGE, to some extent, because he has a letter that he's preparing and he's going to raise financial concerns, that he is wishing to make sure that help guide the study, guide the provincial study so that Langford can address its issues. The way I see this letter that we would be designing is not just to sign on willy-nilly, but to use our collective experience of this very experienced council with our staff and inputs from the community to say, yes, SANAGE would be interested in joining this study, these are the things we're interested in, and these are some of the things we're concerned about. By not participating, it means that we will not have the full advantage of guiding that study. My background inclines me not to fear more information or data, and not to fear other groups presenting data. What I would fear is not being involved in guiding how that data is collected, so I can have some surety about its value to my decision-making process. SANAGE will be undergoing its own community-based review. In part of that process, we say we're going to look at our partnerships within the region. How do we do that? We can study inwards and say, oh, we do this with Langford, we do this with Central SANAGE, but shouldn't we also be engaging the other municipalities in how they would like to be involved with SANAGE? And how they would view regional governance? And how they might view an integration of the various services that we provide? I will confess, I am a long way from being an amalgamist. My colleague, Councillor Plant, talked about the election time. At that time, I was on the doorsteps of many people. A lot of people I met in SANAGE are not amalgamists, but they are interested in more information. And one of the things I took out of the election campaign was that this question is a little bit confusing in what it's going to deliver. Several months in now, being a councillor, I see a real value of extra information, of the extra information, and guiding the collection of that information that SANAGE would get by being part of a provincial-led study. Particularly as it shouldn't cost us anything, there's money available, and we will be doing a lot of internal investigation ourselves, so our understandings of the questions we want to ask is going to be forthcoming anyway. So it's like double value for our own internal process. One of the reasons that I found from talking to people that are uncomfortable with SANAGE amalgamating with other municipalities, and I'll say this now, is that SANAGE has done a fantastic job of a number of things and is ahead of other municipalities in these things, which we'll be discussing during our study. This is a good time to share those things with other municipalities. There's no harm in that. And as they go through their studies, I don't know any of them that are doing their own independent study. I actually wish they were. I think the other councils should do their own internal review of governance and see what they come up with. I'm not arguing that 13 goes into 1, or that 13 goes into 4 or 7. I'm not arguing for that. In actual fact, Councillor Plant and I had a little bit of an arm wrestle about this whole motion, and if I had had my way, I wouldn't have put amalgamation in the title, because I'm not sure that's the answer. And I do see that the Minister has changed the title to be Government Review and Service Integration, because I agree with some of the things that have been said tonight. Amalgamation is a frightening word. What does it mean? I don't know. And that's been a constant challenge for me in this process. But I do believe there's value to more information, and that our citizens will be well served by Council being able to deliver more information, including that would be available through this study. I'm in support of this motion.
Thank you. Councilor German?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's interesting that tonight, this on the agenda, we had about equal number of speakers indicating they favored the motion and equal number saying they didn't, for a couple of reasons. And those who favored seem to be primarily members of amalgamation, yes, and that's fine, and they have a right to be of that opinion. And those who didn't were concerned about the question that was put on the ballot, and we're also concerned about the terms of reference for a potential study provincially. I would agree that I think that and it's good to see that the province has changed the name. I don't think we want to be thinking that we're looking at an amalgamation study. What one member, or a couple of members of the public, including the gentleman who was in favor of moving with the study, had to say tonight that they were interested in improved governance in the region. And that's something that I think all of us are interested in. Most certainly I am. That may or may not involve amalgamation. Amalgamation would be a part of that debate, but it would be a part, not the whole thing. That was the intent of the motion, and perhaps it could have been clearer, but the motion that this council, or the past council, sorry, put in front of the public was to say there should be a debate on the nature of governance in the region, and those who favored amalgamation could bring their viewpoint forward and their ideas and their reasons for it, and those who favored another approach could do the same thing. That's the kind of debate we need. When you're looking at a governance of a region, there are two problems that you need to deal with. One, you need to establish a regional framework or skeleton for future development and sustainability, and that has to have a regional perspective in it. There's no question about that. And that goes beyond just issues of sharing services and so forth. That goes to how do you make the region work well in the future. And that requires a regional framework or regional skeleton. Beyond that, once you establish that regional framework or skeleton, then you need to be able to put the flesh on the bones. That tends to be done much better at a local level, where you get much more local input.